Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Inspinar, your inspirational seminar. Inspinar is a 30-minute conversation designed to empower us all with the roadmap for a more peaceful and productive life. I'm your host, Dr. Nidhi Gupta. About 5 to 7 years ago, I started observing the phenomena of digital addiction. As I dig deeper into the issue, I found some very disturbing truths. Since then, I have devoted myself to exposing the dangers of our screens because we seem to be oblivious to the connection between our screen addiction and poor well being. On this journey of my own digital well being and inspiring other people's digital wellness, I have met brilliant researchers, coaches, and speakers. I am honored to have one of them on our show today, Colin Corby, all the way from London, UK. Colin is the CEO and founder of Technology Wellbeing Limited and creator of the Digital Detox Coach. Ironically, Colin is a technologist himself, and I'll be curious to know what led a technologist to found Technology Wellbeing. Colin is also an endurance triathlete. He is fascinated by the collision between technology and psychology and how this relationship is changing our world, our health, and even probably the way we think. He's passionate about helping people and organizations achieve a healthier and more productive relationship with technology. Colin holds a postgraduate diploma in technology management and a Bachelor of Science in mathematics. He is the author and co-author of a number of articles on the future of work, digital culture, and digital detox. Colin has appeared on the BBC Wales X-ray program as a digital detox expert. Colin, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction, and good morning to everybody over there, and good afternoon to people in the UK and Europe.
Thank you, Colin. I always like to begin our episodes with getting to know the story of our guests a little bit. So what is your story, Colin? What shaped you to be who you are today?
Okay, so as always, it's a series of random events. So I had a great job when I was in my mid-30s, great job in technology, doing a number of world firsts, and really enjoyed it. But the pressure was very high, and I started to have dizzy spells. Now, we're going back to the 1990s, and so stress wasn't really talked about then. So after all of the usual checks and finding nothing particularly wrong with me, I decided to get fit again, because I thought, well, that's the only thing that's under my control. And I remember when I was a child being a good swimmer. So I went into the local swimming pool and I swam 50 meters and I was exhausted. I was wrecked. And so, I had this sort of thing, well, how am I going to get fit? And it's so hard. So I had a memory of being a good swimmer, so I didn't want to give that up. So I just carried on. I took lessons. I learned all the strokes properly. And then I started exercising more. And I found the exercise and raising the heart rate really high and then low in the recoveries. I didn't suffer any dizzy spells or stress. So I did competition swimming. I also joined a triathlon club. And while I was training for the first of 4 Ironman triathlons, which is the really ridiculous ones, it sort of occurred to me that you can change what you can do by just the way you think. And extreme triathlon is impossible. Surely it's a ridiculous thing. And so I became interested in psychology. And then about 2018, which is almost 5 years ago, I was able to combine technology, which I love, sport, which I love, and psychology all together. And I created, and at the time, I was finding that I was getting using my phone, so often, and all the rest of it. And it had me hooked. And so I read up about the behavioral psychology used in phones. So I created the Digital Detox Coach in 2018. And afterwards, I trained as a digital wellbeing coach as well, actually with Liz, who's listening to the call. And yes, that's got my interest. So now I'm interested in combining all of these things and making sure that people, really stay human and get the benefits of being a human. And have that sustainability with technology, because technology is here to stay and we have to use it in our normal lives. So it's that sustainability and balance. And it's very much like you're doing with Inspinar, it's getting that sustainable balance. So that's really the story.
So going from being a technologist to going back to something that you loved, which was swimming/sports, and then combining psychology, leading all the way up to technology, well-being, digital wellness coach. Wow, what a journey.
Yeah, I was playing with my mind. I thought, oh, this is great fun. I'm going to play with my mind some more and see what else I can do.
So when we say playing with the mind, at one point in our conversations previously, you have mentioned that the global technology companies, they also know how to play with our mind, and that there is a chance, not a chance, almost a surety that they're using behavior psychology to a great effect in their products to keep us hooked. And you mentioned that you were hooked to your phone. So tell us what happens behind the scenes as a technologist. What is happening behind the scenes that we, the consumers of technology, are not able to see?
The easiest way of explaining it is as you get older, you have a sort of a memory thing. So you're downstairs in the kitchen and you think, oh, I'm going to go upstairs because I need to get something from the bedroom. And by the time you get to the bedroom, you've forgotten what it is. Okay, so that's a great explanation of your short-term memory. Now, in your short-term memory, you only can hold a number of items unless you think about it carefully and you sort of consolidate into working memory. So when you pick up your smartphone, instantly you have a screen of wonderful things. You've got some red numbers that attract your attention. So it grabs your attention. And within about a second or so, whatever you thought you were going to do on that screen is long gone. You are now checking your emails, you're doing the other things. So that's just one example. So the technology companies, like marketing companies previously, they're trying to say, well, how can we keep people engaged for longer? And because if you do that, you can actually advertise more, and that's the business model for the technology companies. And so they use all of the behavioral side of being a human to try and do that. But of course, humans are much more complex than just behavioral. So we're able to think and make decisions ourselves. So part of digital detox is to put some interrupts and some pauses so you can come back into yourself and say, all I wanted to do was check the weather. Well, actually, in the UK, that's all we want to do is to check the weather. We have weather.
And it always is raining.
Well, not always, but it could be. It could be. And I didn't want to do all these other things. I only went in there to check the weather. So you're able to step back and say, oh, yeah, I don't want to do that. But it's quite wonderful because the research has shown that the mere presence of having a smartphone, whether it's in your pocket or in your bag or on the table, exerts a cognitive load. And so they've tested school children on tests where they've had their phone and not have their phone. And the ones without their phone actually did, better in the tests. And we all know that if we've got a phone on the table, every now and again, oh yeah, I wonder, even if it's turned over, we know that's the case. So technology companies, that's their business. They exploit all of those things. And that's why being a digital detox coach, I'm able to say, well, okay, these are all the things that are going on in their business model. So how can we come back and be human and do the things that we want to do?
So the technology companies definitely do not have our interests or the interests of our well-being in mind. They have conflict of interest with that. So we are essentially on our own, left to figure out how to use the technology to increase our productivity and efficiency and to stay connected, but not let it interfere with our life and not let it interfere with our well-being, not let it affect our relationships and our mental health. That is where the question of digital detox comes. A lot of people think of digital detox as being as something very extreme, where you have to completely give up your technology and go back to a flip phone and throw your smartphones out the window, or go into the mountains, or be completely off the grid, which is not sustainable for a short period. Yes, sure, it works. So tell us a little bit more about what is digital detox in real life?
So digital detox, the definition, general definition, is just a period without being connected to your smartphones, your laptops, and your other devices. So it's a period of abstinence. So that's quite a simple definition. I like to think of it as detox. It's a detox in the sense that all those things, all that information, all that noise, all those triggers, all that pressure to grab your attention, if it builds up over time, and at a certain point, it becomes toxic to our health and well-being. Not straight away, but over a period of time. So stresses build up, pressure builds up. And so that's why digital detox is quite a good word for it. So you want to move yourself out of that environment, away from all those online things, to being offline, in order to allow the body to naturally recover from stresses. Even Microsoft, the Microsoft Futures Lab, have actually incorporated into Outlook a 10-minute period between meetings, because they found that if you went from one meeting to another meeting to another meeting, stress levels just built up and up and up and didn't have any chance to recover. So they know that it causes these things, and they put in this gap, so automatically you get 10-minute breaks between them.
Is that 10-minute break what you call a digital detox snack?
So yeah, so I because you're quite right. If we think of digital detox, we think of going away for the weekend or a holiday and leave the phones behind and doing some other activities. In actual fact, I've read recently that it would take something like 30 days to actually tone down our dependence on the dopamine that we get, the instant gratification we get from phones, in order to be able to control it. Now, no one's got all of that time. But so really digital detox snacking is, well, what is it, something that everybody could do? Well, we have coffee breaks, we have lunch breaks, we have to go to the loo. So digital detox snacking is about taking those periods of times and saying, you know what, these are offline periods of time. If I'm going to go and make a coffee, I'm not going to take my phone with me. I mean, how many people take a break from their work screen by looking at their smartphone? We've all done it, so there's no shame. But that's a continuous screen element. So digital detox snacking is about having regular breaks. Now, the original idea came from a doctor in the UK called Dr. Michael Mosley, who does a podcast called If You Could Do Just One Thing. And so to improve your health and well-being. And he introduced the idea of exercise snacking, because it's actually much better to do 3 periods of exercise, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, than one big session at the end of the day. So being inspired by Dr. Michael Mosley, I've transferred it to digital detox snacking. So the idea is take regular snacks, and if you attach the digital detox snack to something you're already doing, like when you go to make yourself a coffee, then it becomes a habit. And the stresses, a bit like the Microsoft study, the stresses that we're building up get a chance to just sort of subside naturally.
You mentioned, Colin, about the adverse health outcomes. What are some of the adverse health outcomes that you are observing in the people, in the clients that you're working with, or in general, what is happening around you in terms of chronic diseases? What are some of the outcomes that we might expect to see more in the next 10 to 15 years?
So the big one for all of us is that we have a sedentary lifestyle. And studies in the UK have been monitoring this since the 1960s. So I think by somewhere like 2030 in the UK, we'll be like 35% less active. But that was starting before the advent of smartphones. So the advent of all of our on-screen activities just accelerating that general trend for us sitting down and not moving. In fact, we're not even standing up most of the time. I'm standing up today because gravity even helps us. So we're not moving. In the UK, and I think it's probably the same in the US and Western Europe, it accounts for 1 in 6 deaths, about the same as smoking now, and about 20 chronic diseases. So that's one side. We really need to move about more. So digital detox snacking and moving to an offline area is all about movement as well, and doing something you enjoy doing. So movement is really important. And then it's coupled with stress. It's this build-up of stress. If the body's sitting there, we didn't evolve to sit down and look at screens all day. You know, it's causing enormous sorts of problems. But if we just take the stress, in the working environment, people are more stressed. And in fact, burnout is a huge problem. A friend of mine, a very good technologist friend of mine, recently suffered a burnout. And, you know, it's a serious thing. And it took 3 or 4 months to recover. So burnout at work is a problem. I know it's well reported in the US, but at work, burnout's a problem. And it's this accumulation of stresses, amongst other things.
It took him 3 months to recover. That was probably his tipping point. I think as human beings, we are so wrapped up in our daily life with what all we need to do, what all we need to accomplish, what all we have to get off our lists, check. We get so wrapped up in that, we don't realize when we get to that tipping point. And when we get to that tipping point, that is what makes us pause and think that, okay, it's time to go back to swimming. It's time to try digital detox, right? So what might be the tipping point for the current generation to make them truly sit up and take notice that what we are doing right now with technology is not sustainable? How will we get, when do you think we might get to that tipping point? Some of us are there, some of us are picking up on the cues early, but a lot of us are walking around with blinders.
So the difficulty people face is if you're online, you're within the constraints of the online world. And if you then extend that, if most of your contacts, your social life is also online, and then if you're gaming as well, you're within those constraints. So breaking out of those constraints is very difficult. So tipping points are different from different people. In a way, I was lucky. I had a few faint periods thinking, well, something's wrong. It could have been much worse. So a tipping point for a young person would be sort of, it's hard because it's going to be different for everybody. Now, it may be that as a youngster, they've tried to talk to their parents, but the parents have been on the phone and they've felt really gutted that the parents can't even pay attention to them. And it may be that emotional experience of being almost rejected, but not intentionally. For other people, it might be, oh, got no energy, you know. I used to be good at this, I used to be good at that. So it's going to be different for everybody. There may even be a fashion where people think, I'll wear a badge, I need to go offline. Those technology companies, they're so rich, you know, I'm not going to give them any more of my money.
I hope that fashion catches up quickly because we are losing time here.
Yes.
I recently saw a patient in my clinic. She's a 16-year-old young lady. She uses a flip phone and not a smartphone. And I told her, you are unique. You are one of your kind. You're probably the only one in this entire city who uses a 16-year-old who uses a flip phone and not a smartphone. So just talking to her, getting to know her, what her experience is like to be someone who uses a flip phone and not a smartphone was eye-opening and a little bit nostalgic too. It like the good old times where we were not so dependent on technology and life still functioned. We were able to get work done, and at the end of the day, we were able to put our devices away and go back to having a life. Work-life balance has always been harder, but now it's become even more hard.
Yes, I've just seen a comment from Liz, and she's saying one tipping point with young people is bullying online. So yes, thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
If you're a coach, because the circumstances are different, you can then get into what is the tipping point for that person? What would make them? What is it about their life that they would like to change? And do they really want to change it? Because quite often smartphones are really just, they're a comfort blanket. There's something behind them. There's something behind the use of the smartphone all the time.
It's an escape. It's an escape from boredom. It's an escape from stress, escape from anxiety, not having to cope with what is going on in the real life, be able to outsource our coping strategies for even for a little bit. Let's just procrastinate whatever it is that is going on around us and hope that it will vanish by the time we come back out of our virtual world. That's our escape we find in the smartphones. So I want to pause here for a minute and see if we have any questions or comments. Thank you, Liz, for joining us. And thank you for putting that comment. I want to follow up on what you said about young people and bullying online. That is so true. But before the young people get to that tipping point, there is another phenomena. If there are some families of young people who are thinking of not introducing smartphone to their child in middle school, then they are facing the other side where the child comes home from school every day and tells their parents that they are the only ones without a smartphone and they feel left out. So how do you deal with a situation like that? Have you had an experience like that? How do you counsel a family?
Is that a question for Liz?
I was wondering if Liz has had an experience like that.
Normally, it seems to only really work if the children are about 8 years old or younger. Once you get to middle school, if that's the same age as in America and in Europe, it's kind of too late. But it depends again on the child and the parents' commitment. It has to be an entire family agreement. It only works if all the family buy into it. And you do activities together and separately, but there's always these together activities. It can be you do gaming together too, but it's controlled and it's something that you enjoy together rather than all going off to your own rooms. So I do know a family, one son was completely addicted to the phone and the other one, a twin, he had his cookery, sport, his activities outside and was not so addicted, really character dependent. But the problem in that family was the father didn't buy into all the same rules. And so it was really hard for the mum to keep it going. And the key thing is, as a family unit, having rules about where the phone is, when you use it, when you put it away, and what you actually do with it, and trying to find something useful to do with it. Because a lot of children have online homework to do anyway, in addition to all those things. And one thing in one of our mentors, where we studied digital well-being, is a lady who promotes positive upbringing for children, where the children have to earn digital screen time. And so they start the day, it's divided up into quarters, and they start the day with one. And you can't take it away. You can't punish them by taking up time away. So that time is theirs and they own it. And then as you go along the day, they have to earn the right to more time. So they have time alone, and there's rules that set up, really simple ones, but the whole family has to buy in from it. And it really works best when you start early. Once you get to middle school, kind of had it.
It's tricky. It's very tricky. That is so true. Thank you for sharing that, Liz. Thank you very much. Now, Colin, I have another question for you. When you talk about digital detox snacking, is there a location? Can it be done anywhere? How often would you recommend it be done? Weekly, daily, monthly? How frequently?
So digital detox snacking is a daily activity. So you really want to get in several snacks a day. So, 2 to 4 to 5. It's the same if you think about coffee breaks and lunch breaks. It's all of those periods. It can't be done anywhere. It has to be done in an offline environment. And that's because, coming back to, if you're in the same environment as your screens and your smartphone, then you will have built up automatic habits, and that environment will trigger a lot of your activities. So you have to move to an offline environment, and I term this environment a sanctuary. So it may be a room of your house or your apartment. It may be a space in your garden. It may be the coffee area of your workplace, or a restroom in your school, or something like that. But it's a sanctuary, and it's offline. And so when you go into a different environment, there's been research on environmental triggers. You're away from all of those triggers. And as long as you do something you enjoy, then you won't think of the smartphones and the screens. And because it's only a snack, 10 to 15 minutes, you know that you're going to go back and visit your screens again. So you don't suffer the same anxiety associated with that.
Wow, just imagining a sanctuary where there is no internet and no screens seems magical. Maybe there is a chance that after practice for some time, the snacking might be prolonged and our mind might not crave as much to go back to the screens, because our mind actually starts enjoying that snacking process and being away from the screens, and how much joyful that can actually be.
And if you're doing an activity like swimming or some of these other, or yoga or any form like that, it's very difficult to look at screens when you're underwater. So you're doing something you enjoy, which really doesn't lend itself to being on the screen. But we have to start thinking about it now, because we're already using wearable technology, as in the watches, smart watches. And we carry them around with us again, or wherever we are. So to be in an offline environment, we'd have to take off those watches. And it's not that long in the future before, some of your clothes have technology in them, and you may have embedded technology as well. So, you open the doors at work or switch on the light and things like that.
Yeah, we already have Alexa and Siri to switch on and off the lights of our kitchen and bedrooms, and oh my goodness, and smartwatches. I don't even want to get started with smartwatches. I have some very strong opinions about people having conversations while looking at their smartwatches. So that just pushes some of my nerves. Well, thank you so much, Colin. We're almost coming to the end of our 30 minutes of Inspinar. That was a fascinating conversation. I'm sure people are going to walk out of this conversation with some tips, some practical, actionable items to change their life for better and to take their first steps towards digital wellness. Any take-home messages for our audience, Colin?
So the real take-home message for this very short podcast is this idea of digital detox snacks, where you go into a different offline environment and you disconnect for short periods of time, which is something that we can all do. And you can actually extend that to your sleep. You need to disconnect. You need to protect your sleep and keep devices away from your sleeping area at least 30 minutes before you go to bed. So it's that idea of having sanctuaries where you can be offline and you can do human things. And you never know, you might actually pay attention to the person standing next to you.
That's right. Pay attention to the person standing next to you. Find time to digitally detox, snack about 15 to 20 minutes every day, maybe more than once a day. Find that sanctuary, find some leisurely activities that you used to enjoy but do not find time for anymore because all of that time has been sucked up by doom scrolling the internet mindlessly. Thank you for sharing all of those insights, Colin. Thank you for being on Inspinar today. It was a pleasure to have you.
Excellent. And I believe I'm your first international guest.
You are absolutely my first international guest. Here is to having many more international guests on Inspinar. Thank you, Colin. I will wrap up our episode today with our closing message. Let's reconnect with real life. Let's reconnect with what truly matters. Let's reconnect with health, joy, and efficiency. Let's reclaim our time and attention. Let's ungrip devices and grip life. I will see you next time on Inspinar. Thank you.
Thank you.